Hello artists, Thomas here, and this is the first episode of, I guess, the work I am doing on the Ross Draws Bootcamp, which is currently running on his Patreon. If you didn't know who Ross Draws is, he's a popular illustrator and YouTuber who does his own illustrations, I guess. And he currently has a digital bootcamp running on his Patreon account, which I am currently signed up to. So what I'm going to do is, as I complete kind of the different parts of the bootcamp which I feel like are relevant to me and my practice, I'm going to be recording the work that I produce and going through my thoughts and process and kind of what I'm learning as I'm going along. So if what I'm doing interests you, go and check out Ross Draws Patreon, because you can find the bootcamp there for yourself. So the first lesson was kind of a warm-up lesson, I guess, covering some of the basics of, I guess, drawing principles and stuff like that. And the kind of task was to accurately depict a reference as kind of closely as you can and not worry too much about maybe color so much, work maybe in more of a monotone kind of way. And then Ross also goes through a bit of his digital process. As you guys know, I am an oil painter. I come from a fine art background. Even though I do have digital work, it's more digital collage I work with, so I'm still very much a beginner when it comes to digital painting. But because I love my oil painting and my fine art, I chose a painting reference, which is, I need my phone for this one, The Consecration of the Emperor Napoleon and the Coronation of Empress Josephine painting by Jacques-Louis David, French, I think, to study and set myself a real challenge. That was my script, yeah. That was a real mouthful. So I guess let's get into the painting.
Okay, so if you're wondering what the hell this is, I'm literally such a beginner at digital painting that I'm really even still trying to work out how to even like use the brushes properly. So as I was watching the tutorial and stuff, obviously maybe things aren't explained so much in regards to brushes because it is kind of basic use of just a round brush, but even I didn't understand kind of obviously what all of this flow and putting the transfer on for the opacity and the rest of it. So I'm sure you guys probably even know more than me, whoever's watching this, but this was me playing around with brushes to get an idea of how to create the same kind of finish that Ross Draws was creating with his digital piece as he went along. I don't know, for me this is kind of, I guess, what art used to be versus contemporary art now.
So you can see this first stage is simply sketching your reference as accurately as possible. Throughout the video I'm actually only using a simple round brush and at times an airbrush to help blend tones. When I draw, I'm mostly making loads of comparisons, and I always encourage to actually be looking more than you are drawing. Your brain is amazing at tricking you into drawing incorrect shapes, so it's really important to pay attention to what you're looking at.
I think this is actually going surprisingly well so far. I'm a bit more comfortable drawing after, I think, watching Ross do it for a couple of hours. I think the key thing is, when it comes to this digital kind of scene, I realized when I've tried this before, I just really haven't had much patience. And I haven't kind of built things up slowly and carefully, but now that I'm kind of just taking my time and I guess really thinking about each mark I'm trying to make in regards to the picture I'm obviously copying, it's kind of quite an enjoyable experience. Let's see if that continues into the coloring. I'm not sure which direction I'm going to go when it comes to coloring this. If I'm going to keep this kind of these simple tones and keep it quite monotone, like because Ross in his tutorial did it quite monotone with reds. So I'm wondering if I should do the same with this kind of golden orangey that I've got, but I'm going to definitely expand this hair. I think the whole tiara and the head was a bit small. I think one thing I'm trying to do as well is the marks that I make, I don't want them to be like really unclear, kind of maybe too sketchy or something like this. I want them to be like precise and make the shapes kind of obvious without worrying too much about detail at the moment, but kind of obviously I want to catch these big kind of lights and darks where I can, and then obviously the tones in the face are far more subtle. But as you can see, I'm not really working too much on detail of the crown right now, it's just capturing the main shapes.
After finishing most of the line work, the next stage was to build up the shadows and introduce some different values to the piece. At this point, I was still working with the same color and not worrying about changing anything too drastically yet.
So what I just did is just to start plotting in a little bit of the shapes of the detail. I changed my brush to, I went to shape dynamics and went to size jitter for the pen pressure, so I get these spiky kind of edges, not just round all the time. At this point, I'm just trying to spot where the shadows are so I can get a general idea of the pattern, because even towards the end, I'm probably not going to go really deep with the pattern, but it would be nice to at least have a nice illusion of the kind of pattern on the crown or tiara.
I then began slowly darkening the shadows and readjusting the face a little bit, because sometimes there's moments where you just look at a piece of work and you realize something is a bit off. And the point of this task was to try and be as accurate as possible, so I tried to do just that.
So one thing I picked up from Ross was when using the airbrush, you want to be quite subtle and careful with it. You don't really want to overuse the airbrush to get that kind of, I guess, plasticky looking digital kind of look about. I don't know, you see it amongst a lot of, I guess, beginner digital artists like myself. When I've tried to use an airbrush before, I don't know. This is the first time I've really sat through something patiently and gone through it quite carefully. But to be honest, using just small bits of the airbrush here, usually actually he would use a bit of a larger size, because I guess that helps with blending a bit more. But I think the face, it still looks maybe a little bit muddy, but I think when we add skin tones and stuff and it blends a bit more. I'm just trying to really define these kind of shadow shapes here. I'm actually very happy so far with how this is turning out. Okay, I think it's start to now just move on to a new layer underneath. This was something else I learned. So a layer underneath, copy this layer just to save it. And set this to multiply, go to the layer underneath, and now we choose like a skin tone basically. So this bit could be really exciting. I feel like I'm gonna go for this kind of more still I guess an orangey color. But let's go to what are we gonna it slightly more on the yellow side maybe. Let's see how this looks. Alright, well, here goes nothing. Go to basic round. Make it big. Oh no. You can see the values still come through. I don't know about this. I think this is too orange. Needs to be more pink, I think. Maybe a bit lighter. Not sure about this one either. It's actually, I don't know, Ross does it in just one try. It's much easier said than done. How does this look? Should we go for more of a skin tone? Ooh, this works quite well. I quite like this. Should go for a bit more. Because the thing is, when we choose this color, we don't want it to be, you know what, I think I'm going to go with this. This is a very kind of neutral tone, which we can build some really nice highlights and colors on top of. So let's do this one. And build up from here. So I'm going to pop in a background now. I'm going to put in a background now, but I am not entirely sure what I'm going to do for the background. I want it to be simple, but in terms of color, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I'm thinking have some nice contrast in there and maybe add some texture. But then if we go, grey looks quite nice. Something darker. I'm going to stick with this for now. I think once again a more neutral tone with some contrast. Maybe a reddy brown. Ooh, I quite like a reddy brown. Reddy brown looks quite nice. Ooh, darker, that makes it pop. Okay, I'll go with something like this for now. Just bear in mind all of these brushes that I'm using are all from the Ross Draws Essential Brush Pack, which all of us Wizard Patreons get with the package, which is quite nice. Alright, I'm gonna leave the background like that for now. Might work on it a bit more later. But now we've got to start working on separating more of the tones now. So I think I'm gonna add a new layer and then go back to my basic round brush and start working on some of these lighter areas now and separating out the lights and the darks.
You can see here I began adding more highlighted areas. I also began darkening other areas such as the hair and the eye where I added details, and also attempted to continue refining some shadow shapes such as those within the ear. At this point, I also began adding other colors such as a tealy kind of green for the details of the crown, but I didn't want to go overboard with colors as I found them difficult to control when digital painting. You can also see that I couldn't really make up my mind up with the background, and I actually continuously change it all the way to the end.
I'm going to do a tiny bit of experimenting now. I've got some brushes with the texture, and I feel like I want to add some texture in places, but I have no idea what I'm doing, so let's just see how this goes. Okay, no, I'm going back to my basic round brush. I don't know what I'm doing here. I feel like I'm gonna mess things up or mix it up too much.
In these final few clips, I get a bit carried away doing the crown. It was just interesting to basically make a load of abstract shapes that gave the illusion of detail.
I still feel like the shadows lack some form. Maybe they're just a bit too subtle.
I realized that for most of the video, I've actually been very zoomed out. One important thing is not to get too carried away with minute details that nobody will see from a normal viewing point.
I kind of wish I could do something about the hair. I feel like I'm not very good at making the hair look very good at the moment, but it's so-so, it's okay. I feel like the shape here also needs to be more defined. So I feel like I might just do a little bit of final details, and then I'd say this is a good first study for my very first lesson, my very first digital painting that I feel like I've been patient with. So I just overlaid a canvas texture, turned it into soft light on the layer, and I think that actually made it look. So this is off and this is on. I think it looks a tiny bit better, because you can see this kind of has the canvas texture on the left here. Alright, well, I might just do a tiny bit more defining, and then I feel like that's quite a decent first study.
After adding some final touches to my beloved crown, I decided that for a first study it was time to stop. Usually with painting in real life, I'm good at telling when to stop because I plan well, but with digital painting I just still feel a bit lost and I'm unsure of how to create the effects I want to. So this is my finished piece.
So I hope you enjoyed this new kind of format of content that I'm doing, kind of between live narration and scripted narration on top, and then mix it up with some chill vibes and actually academic learning. I don't know if you could count it as that. If you like the video, please do leave a like and subscribe, because I will be doing, as I said, covering more work that I produce on the bootcamp. So I'm excited to see how far my digital painting comes along and what other concepts we're kind of visit in the course. But yeah, so Ross Draws Patreon if you're interested in the bootcamp. And as usual, here is my awkward goodbye.